Hey folks, John Cantera, the Double Broker Bounty Hunter here for the Freight Fraud Task Force. Welcome to the TikTok Diner, where we're going to be serving up some freight fraud with a side of prevention. And I've got two great guest chefs hanging out with me today. We're going to be talking a little bit of nostalgia here because first off, we have Kate Price. Kate, many of you know who have followed me for a while. She's my former co-host back when we were doing Stop the Scam. Kate, so good to see you again. How the hell are you?
Pretty good. Things have actually uh, kind of turned around lately, so it's really good.
I'm really happy to hear that because I know it's been kind of rough for you over the last 6 months, but I'm glad
Yeah,
things are looking up. We also have another superstar in the dispatching world, Chad Ainesworth. Chad, how the hell are you doing today?
Oh, just wonderful. We stay busy. We're working on making better, adapting, making changes, improving our services, trying to help everyone who needs the help.
You know, I got to tell you, I think the motor carrier is one of the least cared for entities in the industry. You know, we've all seen that we actually have to have a law to let them have a bathroom to use when they go to a pickup location. Um, but not having a good support network is probably one of the biggest problems that a lot of carriers have. And that's why we existed as dispatchers. So, one of the things that we want to talk about today is kind of like how dispatch services have evolved over the years, over the last few years, and where we think it's going to. And as you all know, Delilah's Law, which is very rapidly progressing through the House right now, bans foreign dispatch services. I'll give an applause to that, which for the domestic guys like us would definitely be a big boom in business. Um, but it's also going to leave a massive gap within the industry. And that gap also is going to be filled with ignorance because a lot of these guys who are using foreign dispatch services aren't being coached as to how to best run their business, aren't being guided as they need to in how to operate, how to look for good areas to work out of, et cetera, et cetera, which is stuff that proper dispatch service tends to do. So let's talk a little bit about your dispatch businesses and kind of what you've been doing, how you evolved, how the rules that FMCSA put into place back in October 2023, talking about a bona fide agent, how that has enhanced what we do and brought legitimacy to our operation. Let's go ahead and we'll start with Kate. Kate, tell us about your dispatch company and what you guys are up to.
well, we mostly do hot shots. That's been kind of our primary thing for really since 20, probably late 2022. That became like our specialty, and I don't know, just kind of got sucked into it. So, primarily hot shots. Um, I will say the non CDL market for hot shots is just awful. It's not it's not going up. It's not getting any better. It's just pretty stagnant. um, Even with like fuel, what it is now, it's people are struggling to get any extra. It's just it's a pain in the butt. My CDL hot shots, they do pretty well. I mean, their rates they're pretty decent. I do have one step deck now, and that operates in the Northeast, so that's been interesting. He's been with me now for maybe I don't know, a month or so, and I mean he does really well. He's super happy, but it's been really interesting to learn the Northeast and what areas are good and what areas are bad. It's it's definitely been interesting over here for me. Nothing's really changed as far as the 2023 FMCSA, bona fide agent, dispatcher thing, that I wouldn't really say anything's changed, at least on my end.
Well, it's because we've always been ethical in how we do business. So it fell right in line with how we operate.
Yeah, there's really nothing new there. Nothing any different.
Chad, how about you? Tell us about your dispatch business.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're 5 strong on dispatchers. We wide range of equipment that we're overseeing and helping all over the country, of course. We have every area covered in the continental US. Um Diving into the bona fide agent guidelines, we'll call them guidelines, they're not requirements. Requirements require enforcement, and there is none. And that's why, as Kate said here, there is it hasn't changed anything. Our approach here at PMA is to try to educate on those guidelines. Unfortunately, the same vulnerability that allowed a lot of the fraud in this industry is still alive very much so today. And so, um, you can shout from the top of a mountain going over all these guidelines, and they're just they're overlooked and they're not cared for. And so, uh, but that is what we're hoping to accomplish here. One of the many things, of course, at PMA is a simple educating on how to better dispatch service, uh, whether it's us or anyone else, just to ensure legitimacy and the partnership and protection of every small business out there.
Well, when you get a new client coming in, Chad, what's that first call sound like when someone calls you looking for you to dispatch for them?
Yeah, a lot of questions asked and answered mostly. We don't send out a contract or any sort of agreement on the first phone call. My approach is when when you lock into a partnership with the dispatch service, it is a partnership. It should be a partnership. It's not a transactional relationship. It is a partnership. And so we talk about. I ask when I say my team asks questions about their operation capabilities, desires, hopes, goals, all of that. Not just for today, but for next year and moving forward. Um, and of course, we discuss our operation, our capabilities, our resources, and how we can help. And then we typically ask that prospective client to take 24 hours and really think about it. And tomorrow, if they still want to proceed, then call us back and we'll get you out of contract and get you on our schedule.
That's a great approach. Yeah, I know when I first get a call, um, my first question is usually, "What's your CPM?" And a lot of people have no freaking clue how to calculate that. That drove me absolutely insane. Kate, what about you? When somebody calls you for the first time, looking to have you dispatch for them, what's the first? Well, how's that conversation look?
My first question is, what's your MC? So I can look it up and see how old it is, what their safety scores look like, anything like that. So if there's any kind of, funky stuff on there, I can kind of feel it out and see if it's something that we can work with. I always ask what someone's expectations are, and I'm 1000% upfront if I feel like I can or cannot meet that. So if somebody calls me and they're like, I'm a I don't know, 40-foot non-CDL, I'm expecting to make $7K a week minimum, I'm like, I can't promise you that. Like there's no, I'm very, just very honest, I guess, in that way. I don't ever want people to come on and work with me and then be like, oh, she told me she could make it work, or she told me she could help me, or whatever, and then it just doesn't work out. So that's kind of my initial where I go. And then of course, you want to know what kind of equipment they have or what accessorials they have or anything like that. So yeah, it's pretty general, just standard type stuff, but I don't take just anyone. I get so many calls for new MCs and I send them all to Chad. I'm like, here's Chad's number. Just call him, tell him Kate sent you.
Yes, we do get a lot of calls that come from Rock Dove.
Yeah. Yep. I feel like I deserve a little percentage kickback for that, you know?
Well, unfortunately, that'd be very small just because of the unrealistic expectations out there. And you know, I'm not so quick to blame, you know, foreign dispatch services or, you know, any one party on that. It's just there's a lot of really bad information online and discussions out there. I've had clients come to me telling me what they were working security at a truck stop and a hot shot. I told him what he was making, and so he went out and bought a hot shot, and it was, you know, not true at all. So it's domestically just as guilty as internationally here.
Yeah, I've seen all the videos on YouTube, the supposed training classes, and all the guys sitting there talking about how much money you can make doing this. You know, what they never really tell anybody is you have to scale to be able to make any real money in this business. You're trying to make it out there with one truck or whatnot and think you're going to make $1 million in a year. You are sadly in for a huge disappointment. And I made a career out of managing expectations, and I've actually lost some potential clients. And I think you mentioned this, Chad. I've lost clients because I said, there and said, "Look, your expectations are unrealistic." I was like, "This is the reality that you face." Oh, well, if you can't get that for me, then I don't think we can work together. Okay, sure, no problem. Good luck to you. I'll hear from you again in 6 months. You know, I'm begging to come back, but good luck. It drove me nuts, some of the expectations people have out there because of the disinformation that exists in social media. And you know, yes, I understand the irony, folks. Before you start pointing it out, that we're on social media, we're out there on YouTube and whatnot. But the difference is we try to put out good information. And of course, we're not attorneys. We don't sign anything that sits there and says our information is 100% factual. We make mistakes, but we know what you're hearing out there is bullshit, total and utter bullshit. What do you think about this whole foreign dispatcher issue that Delilah's law is bringing up? That Delilah law is looking to ban foreign dispatchers. What do we think about that?
Well, just like the regulations that was, you know, put out there a few years ago, the law is wonderful, but is there really a real way to track and enforce it? Uh, and I'm more interested in seeing the follow up to the law than the law itself. Not just for dispatch services, brokerages as well, or you know, there are some brokers out there that they're domestic brokers, but they have operational support across seas, and that just helps with the time zone, you know, differences and after hour support and whatnot. And so I'll be interested in seeing how it's actually structured and how it can help.
Yeah, I've actually made a few comments to Derek Bars along the same lines. You know, if we go after the foreign dispatch services, do you also go after the brokers who utilize the foreigners for the after hours type support and whatnot? Because we're talking about what essentially turns into the same people. You know, I've known many brokerages who have hired people in Ukraine, Moldova, Serbia, etc., to provide that after hours communication source. And yet this is a lot where the foreign entities are that appear to be invading the industry with all sorts of scams and whatnot. Now, granted, there are some good ones out there. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure some of them actually operate properly, but for the most part, they're crap. I think the only enforcement mechanism that exists in the law, because as you pointed out, Chad, was that after a 1 year initial period for everyone to get in sync, it's a $50,000 fine against motor carriers who are using those dispatch services per occurrence. So, how are you going to evaluate that? Two, how are you going to initiate that kind of a claim against the motor carrier when right now you can't issue claims against anyone in a civil matter? At this point in time, the interpretation of an old Supreme Court ruling is that FMCSA can't issue fines. So, is that changing? And I think Corca, if that passes, changes that, allows FMCSA to issue those fines. But again, enforcement. How are you going to enforce that shit? That's really what I question. We can talk about ethics and rules all day long. How do you enforce it? And the lack of enforcement has allowed the cancer of fraud to spread so deeply within the industry. How are you going to root it out? It takes dedicated people across the industry to deal with this, and to do it in a unified way. I still have not found a group of people who are unified in how to fight fraud, let alone the different services that are out there, the highways, the MCPs, and whatnot, who are trying to fight the good fight. They're not cooperating with each other because they're all afraid of IP infringement and all that happy fun crap. That doesn't matter. At the end of the day, how are we as an industry stopping this stuff? And dispatchers are frankly on the front lines. Well, what have you guys seen when it comes to fraud and how that's evolved over the last couple of years? Chad, we'll start with you.
Well, I don't necessarily believe dispatchers are on the front lines here. I don't see how dispatchers outside of just simple education can really do much. The enforcement needs to be more so informational on the front end, not punishment on the back end, especially as we transition here. The problem occurred because the FMCSA handed out authority after authority over the course of 3 years to anyone who applied and could pay $300. There was absolutely no resources provided, presented even to let them know what they were getting into. So simply providing resources, guidance at the application rather than at the issuance, I think is going to be the most effective. But of course, that takes time and government resources, and we know the government only likes to bring money in, not put money out. So I don't necessarily see that happen. But again, I'll be interested in seeing how it can help.
Kate?
Well, fraud has definitely evolved. It used to be pretty simple and easy to spot. I mean, it's still relatively easy to spot, but the stuff that people are doing now is just insane. Like impersonating shippers. I mean, impersonating a broker is one thing. That's like, we've been seeing that for probably the better part of a year at least. But then going as far as to like impersonate a shipper, they like create their own loads and then find a carrier, and it's so insane. It's so insane. And then the stuff that highway and like RMIS and MCP, I don't really have too many qualms with like MCP and even RMIS, but highway seems like they're doing, sometimes I've had carriers that have had to deal with some stuff from highway that's just super annoying. Like I have one carrier who highway keeps a record of like all their previous drivers, right? And they used to have an undocumented driver, and he's no longer with the company, and he hasn't been for quite a while. But now we're suddenly being like rejected for loads because highway showing that we have an undocumented driver. It's just the weirdest stuff. So I don't know. I feel like in a lot of ways, a lot of the fraud that people look at, or a lot of the things that they try to mitigate, they're just not done in the right way. I guess they're not executed properly.
Because we're seeing too many innocent victims falling to the algorithms that are developed by these screening platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've had people sit there and tell me that highway is not only the gold standard in screening platforms, but it's the way you eliminate fraud. And I've had to point out to people, I was like, you do realize highway makes money off of products developed to fight fraud. Yeah, they're going to fight it. You think they really want it to go away? And I would say the same thing of platforms like Carrier 411, MCP, RMIS. You know, they as a profit generating organization, you know, fundamentally they want other problems to solve. So fraud is a massive trough that they've been feeding off of. They really don't want that to go away. At the end of the day, it actually hurts you. Oops, sorry about that. So it really makes me wonder what is their aim, what is their goal, because all they do is they cause a lot of angst within the industry among good carriers, and we can prove that they're good. But yeah, I feel you on that one, Kate. I feel you on.
There's a piece of the puzzle missing from today's fraud prevention at the broker level. You know, 16 years ago when I started brokering freight, there was, you know, it was 100% discretion. I picked up the phone, I had a conversation, we talked about the load, we talked about the operation. If I felt comfortable, we moved forward. And in the evolution of fraud prevention as it is today, we've developed all these really cool tools, and they help. They do. My brokerage uses Highway. It is a helpful tool, but it is not an absolute tool. As you said, the algorithms tend to um, tell me to avoid carriers that aren't, you know, bad carriers. They're new. They're not well established. They may be missing a thing or two, or per the algorithm anyway. But that's where we we need to be providing that discretionary training as well still. But we're not doing that. Brokers today are trying to hit buttons and look at screens, and they don't know the freight they're moving. They don't know the regulation behind the truck that is moving it. They say they need an inspection for a Sprinter van load, but they don't understand Sprinter vans aren't required by DOT to be inspected. They tell local straight trucks that you don't have an ELD connection, so I can't work with you, but that straight truck stays within 150 miles and they're not required to have an ELD. So we've gotten away from the discretionary training and just started clicking buttons, and it's left this industry vulnerable, especially those newer parties coming in, newer carriers, and that vulnerability is kind of it in my experience, in my opinion, that's where the fraud, the doors were just open wide for the fraud.
Yeah, and once a broker is classified as being weak in fraud, then they start getting hit over and over and over again. And they wonder why it keeps happening. You know, try changing your process a little bit. You know, one of the things that the evolution of fraud that brought into brokerages that really bothered the crap out of me, because as you pointed out, you had autonomy. You could talk to somebody, you got a good feel for them, you know you want to do business with them, and you can move on. Well, a medium and large size brokerages now have these beasts called compliance departments, and these compliance departments really started popping up over the last few years. And the broker has lost their ability to sit there and feel a situation and go by their gut. It's now all driven by a checklist that compliance has. And is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Well, we're seeing good carriers get swallowed up by it, but are they netting more bad carriers than good? Do you don't have specifically a such department in your business right now, Chad? Do you a compliance department?
No.
Yeah.
No,
So
again, we teach discretionary here, so.
I love hearing that. I wish more brokers taught discretionary, but of course, that also goes with training them how to spot all sorts of different things. Because you not only are you stuck dealing with the infiltration attempts and the impersonation attempts, much like our carriers are, but you're also getting slammed from every which direction for the theft, for yeah, I mean, hell, have you gotten any of these? I've seen an increase in the fuel advance scams. Have you guys been seeing that? The price of fuel's been going up. Have any of you guys been
Advanced scams?
Yeah, the fuel advance scams. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
You guys been seeing an increase in that? Okay. Hey, I've spoken to a couple brokers who have said that that's been happening, but I really haven't gotten much of a confirmation. And since guys are running dispatch services, you talk to other brokers a lot. And Chad, you are also a broker yourself. Didn't know if you guys have been seeing an uptick in those types of scams with the fuel prices going the way they are. And are you guys and your carriers suffering over the fuel prices? How have you guys been coping over that?
Yeah, I think everyone's suffering from the increased fuel prices. Yeah, rates have trended and finally started to trend upward to make up for it. But yeah, we're also looking at the amount of freight available in the spot market in the industry, and that number has decreased. So I think the supply and demand laws are hurting more than the fuel prices right now.
Now, I've been out of dispatching for about 4 months now, so I have not been following enough the trends of the amount of freight available in the spot market. I've heard that it was actually going up, but that's a downward trend, is what you're saying. I need to get an update off of the CAS index. I had a new one recently to see kind of what's happening out there.
Mm-hmm.
I've been too stuck chasing after stolen cargoes for the last 4 months. But hey, it is what it is. So what do you see is the upcoming future in dispatching? How do you see dispatching evolving, especially if Delilah's Law comes to pass and the foreign dispatch services do end up going away? Let's assume there's an enforcement mechanism in place. What do you guys see happening? What do you guys see the future of this being?
I see more risk here for me, honestly. As a dispatcher, there's already a lot of risk as a dispatcher. There's not a lot of there's zero regulation, of course, but there's zero protection as well. And so it is a week to week risk that we already take as dispatchers, and more regulation though can be helpful. Also increases risk and liability for those who are affected. And when you take carriers who are used to paying just spitballing 3, 4, 5, 6%, and then tell them they can only use a service that's that's charging currently 10%. Now we're getting into a change in their budget that takes time to acclimate to. And um, my policy and procedures won't be changing at that time. Sure, we could take advantage and rapidly grow and expand, but I still want to conduct business with the utmost morals and ethics and ensure that every partner that joins us, the PMA family, um, are fitting partners for us and them.
Yeah, you mentioned before that and your clients are partners. That's not a transactional
So,
type of type of relationship. Um, are you seeing carriers who are trying to come in looking for a transactional relationship?
oh, every day, every day. Um, it's a forced conversation because in our dispatcher agreement is exclusivity. I can't even say it. It's
You
exclusive.
said it, exclusivity.
Um,
You had it.
Thank
You're good.
you. Thank you. But yeah, and so the conversation typically is, well, can I not get my own freight? Of course you can. The reason we have that in there is we don't want you working with another third party dispatch service. It causes a lot of issues. It really
Sure,
does.
yeah, that could fry your MC too. If you're not careful.
Yes. And so at that point, and this is before they even sign an agreement, which of course we have to have before we even put them on my schedule. It forces the conversation of the partnership versus transactional. But many say they don't want to sign the contract because if we can't get them a load, they want to be able to have someone get them the load. It's all the same resources. Let's be real. Now
Yeah.
look at. I do want to. Here is where I'm sure there'll be comments posted about how dispatch services should have relationships we do with brokers. But one of the guidelines from the FMCSA, if you actually follow guidelines, is bona fide agents are only allowed to work with brokerage authorities in terms of freight procurement. We can't have direct relationships with shippers. So if a broker or if a dispatch service is telling you I have direct relationships, you should be walking away. Of course, that seems to be one of those things where people get sucked into it.
A lot of times that's one of the first questions people ask me when they call me. Well, do you have direct freight or what? I'm like, no, like you're calling a dispatcher. You're not calling a brokerage. So
and so, but yes, many do not want to sign a contract, an agreement because they want to be able to work with multiple dispatch services. And they want that transactional relationship. Not they don't actually want that partnership. They just want to, every resource. And I get that wanting every resource to help find your next load, but you're at that point. I feel like you're thinking about tomorrow or today and not tomorrow, if that makes sense.
So when you have these carriers come to you saying they want to have multiple dispatchers, what's the pitfall of having that? Because we know that a lot of people who utilize the foreign dispatch services, they there is no exclusivity with them, so they do bounce around. What do you see as being the biggest problem for transporters and motor carriers who are using that?
Well, there's two perspectives to look at here on the seat of the dispatcher, um, and the seat of a broker. Uh, you as a broker, they're calling to verify information. Now, who knows who they're calling? My team quite often gets calls for our clients today, but we still get calls for clients who are no longer working with PMA to verify the next dispatch service. So there's phone calls every day being made on that. So you want to make sure that information is accurate and minimalized. That way, the phone call is being made to the right person to ensure their freight is procured. And from the seat of a dispatcher, again, we don't have direct relationships. We're not allowed to with shippers. We're all using the same couple dozen resources out there. And so what it boils down to is racing for the same freight. And what that's going to turn into on the for our clients is that uh, dispatchers are now competing for the same freights for your truck, and there's only one way to compete, and that is who's going to be quicker to accept a lower rate. And so you're really giving up a position of negotiation when you have multiple dispatchers working for you.
That is a very strong point. Kate, you got anything to add for that?
Oh yeah. So we actually have a carrier who, it was actually a carrier that was yours when you handed your fleet over. So they lease on trucks, and there's this, they actually went from when they had agreed to work with you, they had been working with a foreign dispatcher, and they were like, I don't want to, we don't want to do this anymore. We want to work with somebody who's domestic. And they specifically picked you because of the fraud prevention side. So there's a driver for this carrier who, like I said, leases people on, and this driver would not stop using the foreign dispatcher. And the owner of the company was like, stop, we're not using him anymore. We're using these people. Like, stop calling that guy, stop letting him book freight, stop whatever. And I don't know what the, I don't know why he works with him, but the guy will, it's drivers who care more about the gross number than revenue. So they see like, oh, I can make, I don't know, $1,400 in a day or something. Sure. 700 miles. It's $2 a mile. Meanwhile, I might have a load over here that pays $3 a mile that's $1,000 or something, So in my experience, I actually didn't know that the guy had been using the foreign guy, and I booked a load, and I had talked to him like in the morning, because I always reach out to my drivers, hey, are you ready to go? Where are you at? Whatever. And he said, yeah, all was good. He actually told me that I asked him about his tarps, and he said, yeah, I have tarps there, 6-foot drop. I can cover 40 feet, whatever. I booked a load that needed tarped. And at the same time that I booked that load, he had the other guy booking a different load that went to a shitty area for a shitty rate, but the gross number was bigger. So he wanted that load, and it didn't need to be tarped. So I got super irritated, because at that point we are also, as dispatchers, we're forming relationships with brokers too. So if I go back to a broker and I say, like, what do I even say in that situation? Oh, this guy now my carrier is going to look like a fucking turd because their driver was over there using a different dispatcher or something. The carrier is really not bad. The driver is just a shithead for doing that. But we have to maintain our relationships too. So that type of stuff makes us look bad. It can also fry someone's MC. If you have, like Chad was saying, they do, they have to call and verify people. And if you have multiple people, what if you call the same broker? What if two dispatchers, and it's really not that far-fetched, see a good load on a load board for the same carrier, and they call the same people, and they're like, oh, that's weird. You're trying to book for this. That guy is on hold. He's trying to book it for the same person. They're going to fucking just blacklist your MC because you're like, that's just fishy. And
that happened to me.
Yeah. And like Chad was saying, we use the same resources. We're all using the same stuff. We see all the same stuff. It's no different. The biggest difference is someone who's going to not just look out for bigger numbers. Sure, we could book somebody loads that pay $1,400 and only $2 a mile every single day, and that would make us more money. But we're more worried about them making money and staying profitable, having a higher revenue profit margin, because we want to keep those people. We want to keep those drivers. So it's, I don't know.
Well, we're vested in the success of our clients. So right. As long as they're successful,
at the partnership we'll level, absolutely.
Right.
It drove me nuts when I take on somebody new, and I did not put exclusivity in my contract, but it was extensively discussed before we started. And I said, look, If I find that I'm competing against somebody, it's going to hurt only you, not me. So if I find out that it's happening, I will probably drop the contract. Okay, sure. And sure enough, as soon as I discovered, and that's how I discovered it, as what you were talking about, Kate. You have two guys calling in on the same load. One sitting on hold. And then here I am talking to the guy. Oh, and by the way, I have the relationship. I'll be able to get a better rate, but this other guy's quoting a lower rate. So he says, yeah, if he hasn't blacklisted the carrier, he's using the other dispatcher because that broker is paying less to go to that other dispatcher. And I won't sit with that. I can't handle that. What I loved about exclusivity is not only can I sit there and represent my carrier true to form, and the brokers know who they're dealing with, but I can also look ahead. I can look ahead a few days out. I can have that next load ready and waiting. If I'm competing with another dispatcher, then what direction is the truck going in? Am I prepared to move in that direction? Where is this other dispatcher sticking this guy? And then now he's going to rely on me to get him out of a shitty area.
He's going to send him to Montana, Billings, Montana, and then he's going to call you the next day like, this guy sucks. He can't get me out of here. Nothing. I can't do anything for you. What are you talking about?
You took a load going to Montana. What the fuck do you expect? It's not New York. Oh, man. I got so attached towards the end of my dispatching with the Midwest. The Midwest was fertile ground, especially at the lowest point of the economics in this industry towards the end of last year. That was where I was able to make things happen. And every time I hear somebody say, no, well, my other guy wants to, okay, you know what? Stick with your other guy. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure working with you. You let me know when you're ready to talk again. Mm-hmm. Sure enough, it never failed. Within a month, they were always calling back.
I love the Midwest. And let me tell you, the Northeast really isn't bad, at least for flatbed, step deck. I mean, it's crazy. I've sent people up there before, but I've always had a shitty time just trying to get them out. But these are, of course, almost always just hot shots. So I never had somebody up there that just operated like in that little region, just 4 states or 4 or 5 states. And it's great up there. Like he might make 10K this week. And he doesn't hardly ever even go. Like his longest trips might be 250 miles or something.
That is freaking awesome. It's a testament to the flatbed market and how strong that flatbed market is operating right now. But see that out of the Northeast, because Kate, there was a customer you introduced me to a couple of years ago who were running multiple flatbed hot shots. They were running 30s, and I tried going into the Northeast like you. I had a hell of a time getting back out. I just stayed the hell out of the Northeast altogether. It just wasn't worth it.
If he ever tried to come out, like he's the same guy I'm talking about that operates in the Northeast. He wants to go. He has like I don't remember if it's his grandkids or maybe it's like his niece and nephew or something are graduating, and they live in, I think, Wyoming and Idaho. There's 2 of them.
Oh God.
And he's like, I'm trying to figure out he's like, I would love to, be able to drive out there. And I'm like, the problem that I see is it's going to suck trying to get you from the Northeast to the Midwest. You're going to take a shitty rate to go to the Midwest. And then you might take a good rate to go from the Midwest to the West, but coming back is going to suck. So I don't know. It's not going to be anything like what he runs up there now.
6 months ago, you could get away with coming out of the Northeast, going to Michigan, Ohio area, and picking up something there for a really good rate going into Chicago, then grabbing Chicago, going out to Denver or Salt Lake. And you could do decently that way. But that was that was a while ago. I don't know if the market supports that now. What I think most drivers don't understand is it operates in cycles just like everything else in this industry. That there are times when certain markets are hot for certain platforms. We all know the reefers run really hot at the start of the year, coming out of Florida, and then as Florida dies off, it transitions more to the West Coast. If you're running flatbeds, we know that flatbeds run cold towards the end of Q4, start of Q1, and then pick back up early in Q2 as the construction season picks up. You have to understand these different markets, and that's what a lot of these foreign dispatchers don't understand. These foreign dispatchers don't understand the different economics that are involved that make a market hot or make a market go cold.
And they're not here to experience our laws, and that's a thing for me. That's something that I don't like. The biggest thing is you're not physically here. You don't have to physically experience our laws and our regulations firsthand. And that's always kind of been my biggest qualm. Like even if there are people out there that are good. I've made decent, business friends with people who are in Pakistan one of them helped me. He's a freaking computer whiz, helped me build he built a database for me. And then I tried it out, tested it. He's great. But they're not here experiencing our laws firsthand. And that's the part that gets me.
And one of the things that got me was geography. They don't understand U.S. geography. There was a load that I booked once coming out of Boston. It was a partial. There was a set of partials for a box truck that I was assembling around Boston going towards Chicago. And these two small crates paid really freaking well too. Going to Chicago, and the guy sitting there telling me it has to be there in 4 hours. So 4 hours, Boston to Chicago. Yes, sir. Really? Yeah. Not 4 hours plus 24 hours. So tomorrow afternoon, it needs to be there this afternoon. Yeah. Okay. I knew it was double brokered. As soon as I had the cargo in the truck, I went ahead, figured out who the real broker is, called them, and yeah, we made more money on the load. And I had till the next day. The broker was just happy that I saved the load for them and let them know what was really going on. And that's part of the value I think dispatch services actually do provide for domestic clients. It's we can tell you what's right, what's wrong, and if something's wrong, we're your firefighter. We can help fix it. We can solve problems along the way. Oh, by the way, we keep brokers informed of the problem so you don't look like an asshole by not bringing it up. Communication.
Hey, while
there's not enough of that here.
This is really, really funny. I actually just got a text from one of my girls, another dispatcher, and she said just now, asked if we have a way to report someone on carrier 411 for double brokering. I said, no, you have to be a broker. She said, well, somebody almost got us. They when she booked a load, they went to go pick up the load. It was actually different. It was double brokered. It was just a typical old double brokering thing, but she got it all worked out. It's just funny. That just happened. She just sent me that as we're sitting here talking about that shit.
At least we recognize it. I think we see enough about what goes on day to day on the load boards. We all know the load boards are a petri dish for fraud. We get that. We all understand that. But we've worked those boards enough in our careers that we can spot the trash from the good stuff. But when you do start engaging in a load and you have the driver headed in there, the signs will start to pop up. And a lot of times, and why I say some dispatchers are sometimes on the front line, we'll spot it first. We'll spot the pattern first of a potential issue. And it puts us in a position to resolve it before we get stuck. That's why I made that comment earlier. But Yeah, I think, yeah, I actually read a comment just yesterday off of LinkedIn. Somebody bragging about how they don't use a dispatcher. They save it's a box truck, so they save the 7-8% or whatever it is that most people are charging box trucks these days. They save that by handling everything themselves. They admit, yeah, it's difficult, it's tough, but they'd rather do it themselves. I say, have at it. If you can do it yourself, by all means, please do. Enjoy. Save that money. Go for it. But if you want someone who actually understands the market, who understands what's going on, and who's going to put you in the best place to capitalize on these market spikes, I think that's really where the value of a dispatch service comes in, if it's properly run, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if most carriers understand that.
Mhm. They don't. And a lot of them don't figure it out until they go to, I don't know, Miami and then get stuck there.
Unless that's where you want to be.
Yeah, I mean, hey, whatever. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's how it works. And then they end up looking up dispatchers or whatever. Well, can you get me out of here? I've seen people that do like dispatchers that advertise like, oh, your first load's free, or what? Like what kind of shit is that? Why would you do that? Then people just come to you, get their one load to get them out of a bad place, and then bye. Why would you do that? I don't know.
I've been asked that numerous times too, and I've always said no to that. One, um, even for that one load, and if it, especially if you're a newer authority, my dispatchers are, they're on guaranteed pay. Half of
Mm-hmm.
them are guaranteed pay, the other half are salaries, and so no, I still have costs behind them first load, and depending on your authority and what we're working with, there could be substantial costs behind that first load. But number two, that first load free implies that there's, no strings attached, which of course encourages that transactional relationship versus partnership. But it's extremely contradicting to my contract. And I have to have the contract signed before we even put you on the schedule because it has a limited power of attorney. And that's what authorizes us on your behalf to, sign these setup packets and these written confirmations. And so that's I get that often, but it's not a thing we offer. We'll never offer.
Love it. Love that. Yeah. I am glad that there are still people in this industry who try to function ethically, responsibly, um, because we've seen far too often it sometimes pays to not. We've seen lack of enforcement in just about every area of transportation, and so you have people trying to take advantage of that. As I do consulting, trying to support brokers, I'm seeing many carriers out there who claim that they have 3 trucks. They really have 10, but they only insure 3 of them, and they're doing everything they can to cheat the system for their own gain. And I can't stand when dispatchers take part in that. You need to be calling this stuff out. We got to. Otherwise, the industry will not improve. Where do you think the industry needs to improve the most right now, Chad? You see this from multiple different perspectives. Where do you think the attention needs to be right
Well, I think it's all up to we're drawing attention to broker transparency. We're drawing attention to carriers and their use of overseas dispatch services and whatnot. But what controls all of this really? The FMCSA. The guidelines they put in place, the regulation and laws that are in place. There needs to be more proactive approach to uh, new entry audits, to just audits in general, and verifications of not just new authorities at this point, but it needs to be verifications of formal, formally issued authorities over the last 10 years. really. But we can regulate every party outside um the FMCSA, but it all boils down to what the FMCSA allows. So that's where the changes need to be had.
So if you had Derek Bars standing in front of you right now, what's the one thing that you tell him that needs to happen?
Well, yeah, I've actually just emailed him a few times, but no responses naturally. Um, we blame obviously some parties blame brokerages for the fraud, but a vast majority of this industry tends to blame dispatch services for the fraud. Yet they've only given us 9 written guidelines and no enforcement. Um, I think it's massively high, universally agreed upon here. Brokers have to have a brokerage authority. Carriers have to have a motor carrier authority. Why not have some sort of credentialing for dispatch services?
Oh, we've talked about
Um,
that forever.
I would absolutely pay to have some sort of vetting credential that prospective clients can use. It would go a long way in helping educate, forcing the education of dispatch services to the demanding parties there. It seems it honestly does seem like a very simple fix here that would eliminate a lot of ambiguity and unsureness.
I would love to see a dispatch authority, for lack of a better term. Perhaps authority is not the right word. But since FMCSA is about to go away from the MC model and only DOT numbers, then that calls into question how is that going to play out? I love that suggestion, and I've actually said that to him back in December. Let's see if anything happens there. Kate, what would you tell Derek Bars if he was standing in front of you right now?
I don't really think I have an answer for that right now. I don't. I don't. I think it's all just fucked up. I don't think it's ever really gonna get. I don't really have a lot of hope for anything big to really change. Mostly because the TIA is funded by brokerages and it's a whole circle. So I can hope.
And you're referring to TIA as their ability to be an effective lobby in
Yes.
trying to maintain the status quo.
Yes. Yes. That's what's the word I'm looking for? They're very influential on regulation, I guess, or the FMCSA is heavily influenced by the TIA. So, and it's all funded by brokers. So there's also been a big loss for like carriers and brokers are like against each other now, and it's really sad. There used to be such a partnership really in transportation, and it's just not there anymore. And
Well, that's because we've gotten rid of the relational aspects, and those relations are built off the ability to use one's discretion, and now we can't get along because the screen on highway or RMIS tells me we can't get along. So,
yeah,
yeah, I agree with 100%. I missed the days where you could answer a phone, have a 30-minute phone conversation, and book a load together, but um, you know,
Yeah,
it,
that got fewer and fewer towards the end of my dispatching. There were probably about 2 dozen brokers that I would call on every single day and say, "What do you got in this area? What do you got in that area?" They would call me and say, "Okay, where are your trucks at today?" And that went really well. If I went through a full day and I didn't have to jump onto a load board, I'm super freaking excited. That's a very productive day, and profitable. It's usually very profitable. Again, it's that relationship aspect which we have as an industry gone away from, between the interns and the new college graduates going into the likes of the TQLs of this industry, to the even the motor carriers to say, you know what, I see brokers are doing better than I am, so I'm going to go and become a broker and get rid of the truck. And then they fall into the same transactional traps that a lot of these newer brokers, these untrained brokers, jump into. I don't know how you make this better. I don't get it. I don't know. And I don't think the FMCSA knows. Right now, I think we're all meandering in the dark trying to figure out which way is up. And as we do, it's up to the industry itself to try to self-correct, to maintain what level of integrity still exists, if there is any, to be able to keep things going. It's chaos. I think that a good dispatch service helps to bridge that chaos, eliminates a lot of that chaos, and keeps carriers actually moving. How do they find us? That's the question, because these all they ever get are the phone calls, the 20 billion phone calls from dispatch services constantly hounding them. You know, and having had my own carrier company, I still get calls every day from dispatch services wanting to know where my trucks are so they can dispatch.
Dispatch-verify.org.
Okay. Well, with that being said, we're at the top of the hour. Kate, you go ahead and do your plugs.
That's it. Dispatch-verify.org. It's got vetted dispatchers on there. It's got liaison authorities on there. It's also got a blacklist for people who've been reported for being fraudulent carriers, or like chameleon carriers, or whatever, you know, liaison authorities, things like that. It's even there for dispatchers. I don't have any dispatchers currently on the blacklist, but yeah, you can go on there. You can search by your equipment type and find somebody to work with. Takes you to their website, call them, get hold of them, whatever. It's free. Cool.
Awesome. Chad, any final thoughts, plugs, etc. for you?
Thoughts, just ask questions. Provoke a little thought here. As a dispatch service, I don't cold call. I've talked to a lot of, you made the face. I don't believe Kate cold calls. Of the numerous dispatch services based in good old US here, quality services that I know, and I don't say compete with. We all work together very closely. None of us cold call. Don't you know? Don't say yes on that cold call. Uh, let it be a base of information for you. Do your research. There's guidelines to follow for us. Look up reviews, ask for references. Make sure you perform some due diligence in your vetting of a dispatch partner. There's many out there. There's many of us out there. Obviously, I'll go ahead and plug the company. If you're looking for a dispatch service partner with PMA, just submit a general inquiry. One of us will reach out to you. It's after hours that we do those phone calls, because business hours we try to make sure trucks move in, put out the inevitable fires that always pop up. But yeah, happy to have a conversation with you. We got some cool things going on. PMA's here in the coming months gearing up to be able to offer in-house insurance options. We are in development of proprietary software, not just a typical TMS, but it's going to have a lot of cool features for everyone from dispatchers to owner, single truck owner operators to mid-sized fleet owners, and in time, it's a system I plan to use for my brokerage as well. So a lot of cool stuff happening. We'd love to have anyone desiring it to be a part of it.
Well, when you go to launch that, Chad, I would love for you to have you back on to kind of showcase what it is that you do with it and how it works. So if you're willing, I'd love to bring you back on to talk about it.
Absolutely. Anyone wants to just take a gander at what it's looking like so far? MomentumCMS.com. There's a landing page already set up for it. That landing page is being moved around and reworked because when building this software, we want to really stand out. We really want to provide an all-inclusive um, piece of tech for you. And so we're removing stuff that we quickly find is not really pertinent to the operations. But we're adding stuff to that we find is more important than we initially uh, thought. So it's still the landing page is still being worked on, but it gives a pretty good idea of what's to come.
Cool. I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm going to check that out here in a little bit as I round up my day, because God only knows I got 50 billion things going on in the background too. I think we all do. Folks, thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to thank both Chad and Kate for coming out and hanging out with me today, standing here behind the grill as we try to serve up some good information for carriers out there and how to try to get through with their day-to-day business. If you're out there looking for a good dispatch service, these two are among the best. Please, by all means, reach out. Next week on the TikTok Diner, we are going to have Gerald Johnson, Trucker G, hanging out with us talking about Authority Watch, and I will be side by side with a guest co-host, Adam Spencer, who I'm sure will be ripping on me quite a bit because the last time I offered to bring him onto the show, I forgot to send him a link. So God only knows how that's going to work out. If you like seeing drama in the kitchen, be sure to check us out next week. There will be plenty of it. With that being said, your check is sitting on the table. Be sure to tip out your server, and we will see you next time on the TikTok Diner.